Hello and welcome to Trudy Haynes and Company. Today we're together to talk about your vote. It's very important. It's coming up very soon, October the 4th or 5th?
November 5th.
November 4th or 5th. Okay.
5th.
November the 5th. Okay. Now you see how important it is to know the date, where you're supposed to go, and why you're supposed to vote. With me is City Commissioner Stephanie Singer and Chief Deputy Commissioner Dennis Lee. And they are our friends at City Hall to talk about the coming election. In fact, any election, but this one is particularly important, and it's important to me because just recently, and I want to welcome both of you to the show, just recently they were talking about Duke Ellington and how famous he was as a composer and how he represented the United States wherever he went. He went all over the world, and how proud they were of him being an American citizen, and the man couldn't vote. So when you hear that, you cannot you have to understand why it's so important not to give up your right to vote, not to let them take it away from you, why you must vote. And I think both of you can understand why I'm so adamant about that, because we seem to feel that, well, the in-between votes, in between the presidential votes are not important. But this is where it all begins. In your city vote, your state vote, and this is where you get to know your candidates and know what they're capable of doing or not doing. And when you talk about, well, I don't know that person, so I don't have to vote, but you know what the issues are, and so you have to be involved. I didn't mean to get on a soapbox, but it's very important to me.
That's
so
okay.
You take it from there. Stephanie, you're in the office, and you know what goes on. What is so important about this vote?
Well, every single election is important. What's really important is to become a super voter. So super voters are people who vote in every election. And I talk to a lot of candidates. I've been a candidate. I've worked with a lot of candidates. Candidates always want to reach the super voters, and elected officials always want to know what the super voters think and feel about issues. So if you become a super voter, then you are bringing your issues, whether they're the issues from your neighborhood, from your ethnic group, from your age demographic, whatever they are, you're bringing them up. So a lot of super voters are seniors. And it's not an accident that the proceeds of the lottery in the state of Pennsylvania go to seniors. It's a lot of money every year. It's not going to college tuition. It's not going to early childhood education. It's going to seniors. That's related to the fact that many, many seniors are super voters.
Okay, now Dennis, you represent me and our people. Why are we so lax in voting?
Well, here, let's look at the primary that just passed. And you talked about not giving up your vote.
Your right to
your
vote.
Right to
your
vote.
Right
your
to
right
vote.
to vote.
Yes.
Well, in the last primary, over 850,000 Philadelphians decided not to come to the polls. And that was impactful. Now, 50 years ago, we marched. And it wasn't just African Americans, it was everyone. We marched. We marched for the right to vote and to have jobs. And we're still now having that conversation today, right? And the commissioner mentioned something that even recently about the firefighters.
Yes.
The firefighters and what they wanted to do. And because, and this is coming up in this election, the Supreme Court are running for retention. So why don't you...
So this is an example of what might right now seem like I don't even want to say it, an off-year election, a minor election, people say that. But this year, among other things, we have retention races for the Supreme Court. So we have 2 Supreme Court justices who can either stay or go, depending on what the voters decide. Now, when the Supreme Court, I can't tell you what issues are going to come up before the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania over the next 10 years, which is the term that they would be in. But whatever they decide in those 10 years sticks around for a long, long time. So, for example, earlier this year, the firefighters in Philadelphia wanted to recall the mayor of Philadelphia. And they probably read the city charter, and they saw right in the city charter where it says, well, if you can get this many signatures on a petition, then you can have a recall election, and it will be put before the voters. The same way you might remember in Wisconsin, there was a vote to recall the governor of Wisconsin. Yeah. Well, so they were starting to think about that, and then they discovered that in the 1970s, okay, this is over 30 years ago, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania made a decision that recalling elected officials was unconstitutional. Back in the 1970s. So these were people who were elected maybe in the 1960s, okay? So now we have a situation where the people have had something taken away from them, the ability to recall elected officials, and it's lasted almost half a century. And it would have been different if the voters had come out differently in the 1960s. So one of the things that, in our immediate gratification culture, you're not going to see immediately the effect of coming out to vote. Or let me say, you won't always. But there's actually a recent example where you will see it immediately. So before the 2012 presidential elections, the issue of immigration was kind of dead in the water nationally. And then after the 2012 presidential elections, all of a sudden, everybody, both sides of the aisle, is talking about immigration. What happened in the middle? What happened was Hispanics came out to vote. So in that situation, it was a national situation. Nationally, they came out to vote, and all of a sudden,
immigration.
So what
people are paying attention to them.
It's strength in numbers.
Strength in numbers.
It's showing. It's a loud voice.
Right. And something we talk about all the time is that your vote is not just your vote for yourself. It's your vote for your neighborhood. It's your vote for your community, right? And elected officials, whether they're in Harrisburg or Washington, look at numbers.
Or Philadelphia.
Yeah, look at numbers in Philadelphia. So Philadelphia's number right now is on any given day over 1 million registered voters. That's Philadelphia's number.
And that's power.
That's power, right? So you take that 1 million or so, or over 800,000 voters.
No, so it's 1.1 million.
1.1 million registered voters,
in the city
right?
of Philadelphia.
So you take that and you say, okay, every election we're going to vote. Every election. It impacts. It impacts.
Because if we did that, then every election, whoever was running for governor in whatever party would be coming to Philadelphia and would be getting to know us and campaigning hard here, because we would have 1.1 million votes in that election.
That's what you're talking about, the super voter.
That's the super voter. When you're a super voter, if we had 1.1 million super voters in the city of Philadelphia, if it was like, I'm a Philadelphian,
that's right,
I eat cheesesteak, I root for the Phillies, and I'm a super voter. If that were our attitude, we would not be seeing the cuts to education that we're seeing today.
Well, let's look at education and the prisons, right?
Yeah.
So this year, the superintendent stood out and said the schools may not open because of a $50 million deficit, right? We have never heard a prison superintendent come on any kind of television and say we're gonna close the prisons and let the inmates out, right? Because we're short money in the budget. That's never been on the table, right? It's never on the table because, again, we have to show that vote. Now, if Philadelphia, right, and we're talking about Philadelphia, in each election, something you mentioned about voter ID, and you mentioned it in about 2002. Talk about that, Judge.
Oh, yeah, no, 2001.
2001.
So last year there was the big issue of voter ID, and it's still chugging along in the courts. But there was a very important court decision by a Commonwealth Court judge. And he could have right then said, you know what, this is unconstitutional, this law, and it should just be stopped. He didn't say that. Now, that judge was elected in 2001. Okay, he won by something around 100,000 votes, and in that election, over 800,000 Philadelphians stayed home. Now, what incentive does a judge have to come to Philadelphia and understand Philadelphia? We don't need every judge in the state to be from Philadelphia, but we want every judge in the state who has jurisdiction over us, who makes rulings that affect us. I want that person to come to Philadelphia and campaign in Philadelphia and understand Philadelphians and how we live.
Well, it was pointed out.
And we do that by voting. We can force candidates to come here.
So you're still talking about the power of numbers.
The power of voting. Big
because Philadelphia
numbers.
and Pittsburgh are probably the largest counties in the state.
Right.
And if they collectively, we could run the state.
Well, I mean, if everybody, yes. I mean, there's power in those numbers. And what we've seen...
There's tax money in those numbers.
And there's tax money. And you know what, the other thing? I'm glad you brought up tax money. When you're voting on the this year on the ballot, you have to look at all the judges, and you have to look at the district attorney and the city controller. Now, if you look at that on a 10-year basis, you're not only voting for those candidates, you're voting for the budget to pay those candidates. So that budget it's about $35 million that you're voting on. So we don't see, as a voter, you don't see that because you see the candidate, but that candidate is getting paid. Yeah. Now, how is that candidate getting paid?
Well, when they get into office,
when they get
the winning candidate.
The winning candidate is getting paid, right? So over 10 years, right, that winning candidate is getting money. And where is that money coming from?
Taxpayers.
Taxpayers, right?
Well, here's another way to say it. If I said to you, hey, Trudy, $35 million worth of work for you. You can have that done for you over the next 10 years. You can take it. Now, are you going to show up to the hiring meeting?
Absolutely.
I think you would. It's our money. It's being spent. It's taxpayer money.
And that's the only way that you have of saying something about it.
Listen.
Where it goes, who uses it, how it's used.
It's not the only way. It's the first step to being in a position to say something about it. Because if someone comes to talk to me and they haven't even voted, as an elected official, I mean, sure, I'll listen to them. But if someone comes to talk to me and says, look, I have a community meeting, we meet, there are 100 of us, we meet once a month. I'm all ears, okay? And if someone comes to me and says, I lead the AARP of Philadelphia, and we have thousands and thousands of voting members.
All the sorority, all the fraternity,
or that's right,
all the Jack and Jill.
Whatever group it is, whatever group you're part of, if you can get the members of your group to vote, it's like the Hispanics and the immigration at the national level. You can do it at the local level.
Right. And one thing that one of the things that we established in the very beginning was our mission and what that mission meant. Free and fair elections.
And an informed, engaged electorate.
And a respectful workplace and all of that. But that's why we go out. That's why you have us going out to meetings every night, if need be, okay? Yeah. And on the weekends, if need be, because people need to be educated. They need to understand. Yes, people may say, judges are running. I don't know the judges, and I'm not sure who's running, what have you.
Or who makes the rules.
Or who makes the rules. But we say that, you're going to be impacted by a judge faster than you will the president.
That's true.
Yes.
Okay, in your family.
Yes.
You're going to be impacted. Or the district attorney.
Or the controller. Or all the others who are running this
who
time.
Are
all the commissioners.
Or the city. Well, every election you're impacted. Yeah. Whether you want to be or not, you're impacted.
That's right.
By what we do and by what we...
and I would go even further. When you don't vote, you're betraying your neighborhood, because your neighborhood won't get the same kinds of services as a neighborhood that votes a lot. You're betraying your age group when you don't vote. You're betraying your neighbors. You're betraying your family. You're betraying all the people who look like you when you don't vote, because it's power and you're throwing it away. I hear people talk a lot about, especially in the African American community, about how people marched and died for the right to vote. And it wasn't just for the right to vote. It was for the power that they got from voting, and what they saw was the power that was taken from them when they didn't have the right to vote. And what's happened now is we're in a situation where
it might go again.
Well, and also, you don't really need to take away someone's right to vote if you can just convince them that they don't need to vote, right? I mean, if you say, well, let's let everyone be apathetic and not vote, it has the same effect as if your right to vote were taken away.
Them into not voting.
Yes,
And
that's
that's
another
where-
one.
that's-
That's another one.
And
Yep.
that's where we got into that battle with the voter ID.
That's right.
And you know, you make an interesting point. Is that the trend now is after the presidential. And listen, you know, the presidential election, we come out, but you know what? 68% and 65% is not great numbers.
That's
I don't
right.
know about you, but when I was going to school, if I brought a 65 or a 68 home, I would probably not be sitting here today, right? That's nothing
Well,
to.
yeah, because you're behind with
That's
your voting.
right. That's right. I'll be
Still.
standing up. I'll be standing up. Exactly. But look at it right now. So we get real excited about 68. We get real excited about 65. We have the next the judges. You know, we just did the primary. That was 9%. 9%, right?
Eligible voters.
Right, over 850,000 people not coming to the polls, right?
Yeah.
Now,
That's pitiful.
we have this November.
That's pitiful. And in one of those races in the Democratic primary, a Superior Court candidate from Pittsburgh beat a Superior Court candidate from Philadelphia. So it really has
And you got that
consequences when we don't
gerrymandering
come
going on.
to the
and
polls.
We have no say on that because the right people aren't there. That's the other reason for voting, to get the people who
that
are
they
your-
believe in.
Yeah.
That they have, that they kind of carry your same message or your same ideology. You know, that's who you want, you know. But at the end of the day, when you don't vote, right? We have a next 2014. There's a governor's race. Now in 2010, right? Regardless of who you voted for, right? The governor's race was won by about 350,000 votes, right?
Yeah.
Philadelphia, again,
Half
right?
a million.
Half a
million.
million.
Of us could have come out, didn't.
did not come out, right?
So now we're complaining.
Now we're complaining
Yeah, now we're
about
complaining. General assistance, cuts to the schools.
right, and all general assistance, and just
And
recently
Healthcare.
healthcare, right?
That's right.
So now we're coming up to a 2014, right? Now we're creatures of habit. Now we did 9% in the primary, right? People are saying that the general is going to be better, right? But if we don't get this message out that people, you have to vote, right? You have to vote. We've got to get 9%, and we're going to shout if we get 30% in the general, right? So what did we get in the 2014? Well, the last primary, I think it was like 35%, or might have been less, right? But Philadelphia's got to come out more than 35% to have any kind of decision making,
Exactly.
no matter who wins. We've got to get the number up no matter who wins.
That's right, because whoever the governor is, you want her or him to be
right.
looking over their shoulder at Philadelphia and always thinking, how is this going to play in Philadelphia? Is this good for
So
Philadelphia?
in other words, when you vote now in November, you're kind of predicting things to come in.
That's
That's right,
right.
because
That's right.
you
I'll
only
tell
have-
you,
go ahead.
if Philadelphia came out to vote 50% in this coming election, there would be newspaper stories and every statewide candidate would be
headed to
headed to Philadelphia.
You cannot wait until the primary of 2014 because numbers are based on what you did yesterday, right? So now if everybody looked at, like you said, Commissioner, if everybody looked at November and we did 50%, right? You and I and all of us will be out celebrating. In fact, you know what? We need to. We're planning to celebrate even regardless. You know, we're planning to celebrate because every election we should be celebrating.
We should know what's going on.
Know what's going
and that
on.
brings us back to the premise of getting involved. You can start with your local what do they call them? The people that walk up and take care of your neighborhood.
Oh, those are your committee people.
Your committee
Yep,
people. You
yep,
can start
you can
going
talk
there.
with them.
You
Right.
mentioned
Your
something
block
about
captain.
Your
block
block
captains. You can start getting information on your computers.
Right.
You
That's
can look
right.
up.
That's right.
You're sure you may not. I don't know half of the candidates from other states.
Right.
But you can look them up. It's so easy. You can go to the library if you don't have a computer.
Yes, that's right. Or come to room 132 City Hall, which
Yeah,
is
we'll
where
be
we
glad.
spend our time when we're not out on
They
the
can
road.
come there and get all the information about
All the
any
information they
candidate.
Absolutely.
You know, they can
from
call
all
us,
over the
we'll come
state.
out. I mean, if they call us, you know, our phone number is 215-686-3460. We'll be glad to come out and
Or
talk to you.
311. Sometimes I forget the number.
Right.
I call
Uh-huh.
You call
311,
tell them.
and they're great.
Yeah.
They'll give you whoever you want in that building.
That's right.
So you just
Right.
ask for Dennis Lee, Stephanie Singer, friends of us,
That's right.
friends of the voters.
Exactly.
Well, I want to understand that we are asking you or telling you or permitting you to please get out and vote this election. And we're going to be talking about who's on the ballot, and the questions are going to be on the ballot. We'll help you go through those and to know something about the candidates who will be running in this election on November
Fifth.
5th. Okay, on November 5th.
Tuesday.
Yes, but
Tuesday.
right now is a very good time for you to get involved and to get to know who's who and why and what's at stake. You must know what's at stake. Have you got any other suggestions for them to set up the fire under them?
Well, you know, Judy, we appreciate being here. We're celebrating because we have a new website, Philadelphia Votes.